We have been talking about the equipment that you would need to prepare to do your Wi-Fi penetration testing. And we have talked about the requirements for your laptop computer and the Wi-Fi network interface card. If you want to be able to get some extension for the range of your wireless network interface card, there are options for adding antennas that can extend the range. Now in this video we will be talking about more software related aspects, so the virtual machine environment, which is optional but something that could be convenient, the operating system, and then software tools. The virtual machine you might want to use. Why might you want to use a virtual machine in the first place? Well, we're going to recommend using a Linux distribution called Kali Linux. And so one reason you might want to use a virtual machine to be running Kali Linux is that this distribution is not really meant for general purpose usage, and it is specialized for penetration testing and security related functionality. Because of that, we would recommend that you run it in a virtual machine so you can stop it when you're not using it, and you can be using something else which is more suited for general purpose usage when you're not using Kali Linux. Now what kind of virtual machine environment would we want to use? There's different possibilities. There's things like VMware, and there's things like VirtualBox. VMware is commercial software that generally is easier to use and easier to configure than something like VirtualBox, which is free and open source, but you need to spend a lot of time to configure it, and then you might still have problems getting it to work. Anyway, this is up to you. One challenge when using virtual machines is to be able to get the hardware from the host machine to work. You want to be able to get accessories and things like network interface cards to be available to your virtual machine. So generally, we would recommend using USB Wi-Fi network interface cards because these could be easily accessible in the virtual machine. Whereas other kinds like PCI interfaces might not be as easily accessible. As for the operating system, normally a lot of people like to use Windows-based operating system or Mac OS, but these are good for various kinds of applications and for doing general purpose work and entertainment and so on. But when we're doing things like Wi-Fi penetration testing, we need to be able to have more control over the hardware, and there's certain things that we need to be able to do that are not typical or normal usage. So we might find, for example, that these general purpose operating systems do not have as good support for putting the Wi-Fi network, the network interface card specifically, into monitor mode and then seeing every packet that's being transmitted and received in the Wi-Fi network. Because for normal usage, people wouldn't be using monitor mode. So these operating systems are good for normal usage, but it might be a bit, well, not to say it might be, it can be quite challenging and troublesome to get them to do what we would like when we want to do Wi-Fi penetration testing. So we recommend using Linux, which allows you to have better control over what's going on at the lower layers and in the kernel. And there are many distributions of Linux. We would recommend not just using any distribution, but something that is specialized for security and penetration testing. One that has been around for some time is Backtrack, which is actually a merger of two different distributions and collects various tools. It was therefore designed to be convenient for doing penetration testing because of the various tools that it comes with. It was based on Knoppix, but rebuilt in 2013 by Offensive Security to a distribution that's based on Debian, and this is named Kali Linux. So generally people would use Kali Linux. Now, there's different ways to run Kali Linux because it can be run from a live CD. So that's where you just put the CD into a CD-ROM drive. You can also install from a CD onto a virtual machine, or you can download the virtual machine images and run directly. So whichever way you're using, we would recommend either install from CD into a virtual machine, or get a virtual machine image directly and then just run that. So anyway, whichever way you're running your operating system, then various software tools are also available. In Linux, there are the so-called Linux wireless tools, which can be found in most distributions. They include things like iwconfig, iwlist, and so on. More recently, there's a suite of tools called IW. So you have IW space list and IW space whatever, the different members of this suite of tools. These are more powerful and should normally be used rather than the older Linux wireless tools, even though iwconfig is still very convenient to use. Then there's all kinds of other software tools like the Aircrack NG suite. Used to be called Aircrack, then the more recent version of these tools is known as Aircrack NG. And there are quite a number of these tools. The most commonly used ones, and we will be going through these, are listed here. So things like Aircrack NG, Airmon NG, Aerodump NG, Air Replay NG, Aerolib NG, and so on. And then besides the Aircrack NG suite, there's other tools as well. Wireshark is just one of these other tools, but we will be going through some of these as we go along in other videos.